to the Uncomfortable podcast with my special guest, Victoria Stakelum. How you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
No problem. Can you tell the audience a little about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am a mindset and transformation specialist. So I had a lengthy corporate career culminating in very senior leadership where coaching, neurolinguistic programming were techniques I used in my leadership career. And latterly, I qualified as a psychologist and hypnotherapist and energy worker, energy healer. And then I left my corporate career and now I work for myself supporting others using these techniques, which are all about really how to harness your subconscious mind to make things happen. But I'm a scientist. I'm kind of in this world of woo-woo, but I'm very scientific by nature. And I really love and I'm fascinated by how you can explain things that seem inexplicable when you have an understanding of neuroscience, psychology, and quantum physics. So my practice is all about mindset and transformation, but my skill set and knowledge is rooted in scientific stuff that is often not very well known and understood.
Oh, that's very deep. So, how did your journey with NLP begin?
So my journey with NLP was accidental, and I'm so grateful for that. When I was in my first graduate training job after university, I was trained in a number of business things. And one of them was a 3-day introductory course into NLP, because NLP is very good for effective communication and also sales as a discipline often uses NLP. So I had this 3 days of training. I found it fascinating. And then I moved on in my career and never gave it another thought. And then 20 years later, when I was revisiting NLP to become certified as a practitioner and master practitioner of NLP, I had this profound realization that all of my career success, and I had a very successful career, you know, I'm multi-award winning leader, and I founded a digital university. And, you know, by most people's measures, I had a very successful corporate career. When I looked back over why had I been so successful and how had I achieved the things I'd achieved, I realized that 3-day training in NLP, age 23, had completely shifted the course of my professional existence. How I showed up was informed by those things I'd learned, but I hadn't realized. I'd just done my thing. I'd just, you know, gone into the world and, you know, had jobs and they became a career and I did very well. It was only when I recertified and looked back and I thought, God, this stuff I learned, it's really familiar because in 20 years it hasn't left me. I've been using these techniques. I just haven't realized that I've been using them. So for me, NLP was an accidental journey, but a really important one because it set me up for success that's persisted throughout my life.
So it has played a specific role in your personal and professional development.
100%. And I believe it's underpinned what has been, you know, by external measures, a very successful and profitable career. Yeah.
So in your leadership, you achieved multiple success, including becoming a global strategist and director.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I had my first global executive leadership position in my mid-30s, which as a woman is quite unusual. And actually, that was in quite a male-dominated industry. It was in, doesn't sound very glamorous, it was in the flooring industry, which was at that time very male-dominated. So for me, as a 35, I think I was 36, 37-year-old woman, to be on a global executive management board, that in itself was quite an achievement. I then went on to become an executive shareholder, also in my 30s, in another multi-million pound company. And then I became the deputy chief executive of another multi-million pound company before I turned 40. And I think the way I was able to communicate and think, both of which came from that early exposure to NLP, were a big part of my ability to show up with credibility in these kind of lofty white middle-aged white guy type environments where I stood out like a bit of a sore thumb.
Most employees are like that, yes.
Yeah, but I could hold my own, even though I was young. I could hold my own, and I think a lot of that came from those skills I learned early on. And the other, probably the parallel discipline that really helped me was mindfulness, which again, to many people might sound a bit hippie or a bit woo, or there's a certain group, there's a certain type of person we associate with things like meditation and mindfulness, but actually as a very clouty corporate leader, my ability to handle extremely high pressure environments, sometimes be confronted by slightly aggressive characters or people that wanted to undermine me or push me to the side because I was a female and because I was younger and because I didn't, the face didn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
I was very good at staying composed and not letting that stuff get to me. And again, I think that was this combination of NLP as a set of thinking practices that helped me stay positive and powerful, coupled with mindfulness as a discipline that helped me stay emotionally regulated so that I didn't burst into tears or shout back or, react emotionally. If I was hit with challenging behaviors from others, I would breathe, I would stay composed, and I'd decide what response is going to serve me best here. And I was really good at kind of taking the challenging behaviors in these, they're often quite aggressive environments, boardrooms. They can be quite heated, quite challenging. And I'm quite proud of the fact that I managed to kind of sail through that in quite a composed, calm way, always. It really suited me.
So, you think those strategies and principles contribute to your exceptional achievements?
I do, absolutely, yeah.
Elaborate on key techniques you utilize in helping individuals release blocks and negative emotions and beliefs, rediscovering their identity, reconnecting to their success energy, and healing themselves.
Yeah. There's are lots
Yeah.
of different things. So,
Yeah.
so I'll try and offer a few.
You had a lot to, when I was researching, you had a lot to take from, so.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean,
questions that I came up with.
yeah, no, it's great. It's great, but there's each of those is kind of an individual thing. So I'll try and share some of the most helpful principles and strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the first and most helpful approaches a person can take is to choose a response rather than to react. Most of us, over the course of any day, when something happens, we're reacting, and we're reacting on autopilot from our emotions. And the seat of our emotions is subconscious. We're not saying to ourselves, I'm going to show some anger now. That will help manage this person back. We just get angry. Or when, we don't choose, I'm gonna feel sadness now, because generally sadness is quite a low energy emotion. We become less powerful with it. It's an important aspect of grieving, for example, and it's an understandable response to certain situations. But when it comes to interacting with others, we sometimes use sadness as an emotional strategy subconsciously to gain sympathy, to get what we want. But actually, it's quite a low power way of doing that. So one of the best tools, it's an ABC tool, which is first to become aware of that reaction, that emotional reaction as it arises. So an event occurs outside of me, I'm having a reaction, but rather than expressing that reaction, if I can become aware of it in my body, those sensations of anger or fear or sadness or whatever it might be, if I can learn to notice as it happens, I can catch that reaction before I've made a situation go in a certain direction by becoming emotional as a reaction. So the first thing is to learn to become aware of your emotional reactions, and that itself is a lifelong practice. I've still sometimes, shouted at one of my kids or my husband before I've caught the reaction, and I've been at this for decades. But it's a really great practice to be in, is learn to feel that emotion. So the A is for awareness. The next thing is to regulate that emotion. And the simplest, most effective way to regulate our emotions, there are many ways we can do it, but the simplest is a slow, long breath through your nose. which actually has the effect of regulating your neurology. So a deep breath down into your belly through your nose helps calm those physiological responses that come from an emotional reaction. And that creates space and a moment to think. Because when we're in the grip of an emotional reaction, we're kind of overwhelmed with it. The thinking part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, closes down. It closes down with emotional overwhelm and stress. So we can't do our best thinking. That's why when we're heightened in an argument with our other half, we shout and we say things we don't mean. And, you know, it's really easy to pull apart our argument because the thinking part of our brain is not in charge. So the B of the ABC is to breathe. That creates some space. It down-regulates our nervous system and it puts the thinking part of our brain back in charge. And then the C of the ABC is to choose. And what I mean by that is to ask yourself that question: what response will serve me best here, or serve the best outcome here? Because almost always the emotional reaction is not the best response. It's an evolutionary strategy from when we had to have these emotional responses to keep us safe. You know, we had to feel so much fear that it sent all of our blood to our muscles and our hearts so that we could run away, or we had to feel sufficient anger to create force to push a threat away from us, or to push ourselves away from a threat. So we're often working on out-of-date biological information. For most of us, day to day, we're actually safe, but our emotions make us feel like there's something deeper going on. So if we can become aware and then breathe, we get to make a choice. What could I say now, or what action could I take that will best serve the outcome I want? And when you make that a practice, when you make it a habit, you become far more effective at creating the outcomes you want in life, because you manage your communications, your relationships more effectively, you influence much more effectively, because typically people don't respond well to negative emotion. So rather than feeling negative emotion and pushing it at the person that you're interacting with, if you feel negative emotion, breathe and choose, you are much better able to have influence. And the ability to influence others is one of the single biggest features of living successfully. If you think about it, everything we do with others. So to be able to influence others more powerfully is a big part of creating success in any field in life.
Yeah. I noticed that I got invited to an event recently. So I'm like, okay, no problem. I'm just thinking like about the $30 ticket. These tickets, oh my goodness. One of them was $1,000. It's like an executive thing. Then like the next one is like $500. That's like VIP. Then the minimum is $200. So it's just like, oh my goodness. Then you gotta pay for the hotel when you get to the place. So like these are people able to talk in front of hundreds and thousands of people, got a problem, got a sweat, got a stutter, and they make a lot of money doing it.
Yeah. Well, that probably leads me on to one of the next tools or strategies people can use. And this is about fear as an emotion. The emotion of fear is probably the emotion that most blocks people. And fear can show up in so many different ways. So it can hold us back from public speaking. It can hold us back from taking risks or jumping on opportunities. It can lead to procrastination. So often, procrastination is actually fear. It's fear that maybe I can't do this thing, maybe I won't be good enough, maybe I'll achieve it, but then things will go wrong later. It feels too big, it feels too complicated. At some level, fear shows up. And stress and anxiety, which are subgroups of fear, if you like, can be very present for many people. And again, fear, the reason it's so debilitating is because it's probably, from an evolutionary perspective, the emotion that was most important in keeping us alive. When mortal threat was a part of day-to-day existence for early humans, it was fear that kept us alive. Now, in modern life, most of us actually don't have anything to be fearful of. We're safe, most of us, in general.
Mm-hmm.
But we live in an age when anxiety is so prevalent everywhere. And I believe it's because our systems are designed for acute spikes of fear. You know, we're out hunting on the plains of Africa as you know, as during early human development, and then there is a threat. You know, a lion. We see a lion in the distance. We are designed to have an acute spike of fear that sends us into flight mode, that powers our muscles and hearts, and we get ourselves to safety, and then we relax and we know we're safe. But in modern life, there are no lions on the horizon.
Yeah.
So we don't get those acute spikes of fear. And what then happens is we tend to attach that fear chronically to day-to-day life. We become disproportionately fearful or debilitatingly fearful of the public speaking or the board meeting or the icy drive to work, or you know, or whatever it might be, or of being lonely, of our partner leaving us. We attach this chronic anxiety to things that actually are not mortal threats.
Yeah.
And I, you know, in my corporate days, I used to get a bit of this if I looked at my emails at 8 o'clock at night and I saw an email from someone I maybe didn't love at work, I would feel anxiety, but I was safe. The worst this person could do was irritate me slightly, or, you know, do something that took a project in a certain direction. It wasn't actually a threat to me, but I would experience it as anxiety because I actually in my life had nothing to be scared of. So fear is like this free floating thing that we attach to non-fearful things generally. It becomes irrational, it becomes chronic and low level. And the problem with that is that it can become embodied. That stress and anxiety creates inflammation in the body that can actually, it can cause allergies, it can cause long-term chronic illnesses, it can cause fatigue, you know, all sorts of issues stem from anxiety and stress that become embodied. So it can be really healthy to create moments of acute stress in order to create a focus for that free-floating fear. My husband favors ice cold water swimming, which I don't know if you've ever done it. I've done it a few times. It does create a feeling of acute terror and resistance because you really don't want to do it because you know it's going to be hideous, and it is. But afterwards, having kind of taken on that action, created that spike in the fear hormone, which is cortisol, it's like it clears it out of your system. And then you actually lower your overall level of anxiety. So it's actually it's really important to find healthy ways to take on your fear. Sometimes that can be doing a thing that scares you. It can be taking on practices that deliberately create cortisol. You know, it's why people love watching a scary film. You feel kind of cleansed afterwards, after, you know, being like this, you kind of have a release afterwards. I wouldn't recommend that if you're prone to actual stress and anxiety in a chronic sense, but you know, things where you actually take physical action to create fear can be really a healthy way of lowering anxiety and the physiological symptoms of anxiety. And the other thing it can be really important to do is actually look at if you are debilitated by fear, if it's actually stopping you from doing things that you need to do in order to create success in your life. So, for example, as an entrepreneur, if you're not being visible on social media when you need to do that to create clients or customers, you need to take that on. You can do that through support, doing subconscious release work. You can challenge yourself to take on a small action that feels uncomfortable, that feels a bit scary, because by doing that, you teach yourself, I survived, it was okay, nothing terrible happened. And you gradually reinforce the realization that you can handle this, and you kind of grow the number of things you're able to do. But I would say it's very, as a strategy for successful living, taking on irrational fear or the kind of sneaky fear that holds you back but doesn't look like fear, it just looks like resistance or procrastination, is really important, because otherwise you just get smaller. You know, your ability to do things just gets less and less.
No, yeah, you're so right about that. Most fear is political or social. It's not danger. Like looking in the horizon. And I did I uploaded a video I think last week, and it's about the question was, do systematic racism still exist? And my two co-hosts at that time agreed that it does. I felt it didn't because systematic means everywhere and everyone. There's no meaning individuals. Individuals are racist. Individuals do hateful things. Institutions do hateful things, but like it's not as a whole. And they didn't understand me saying that because they were so, as you said, fearful of that part of the world. So these are people that don't travel. And the one that did travel, she was from North Carolina. And if I don't know if you know about American history, North Carolina was one of the racist, states in the United States. So she grew up around that all her life, her stories. So I understand her fear, but my question to her was, you in Jersey now. Is it totally different from when you was in North Carolina? She says definitely 100%. So it's not systematic because it's not everywhere.
Yeah, there's so much in what you just said that strikes me, because I agree with that perception that it's not systematic. And like you say, it can be individuals, it can be institutions or organizations, but there are also many, many good people out there in the world. And I think what you just said highlights for me the risk of perceptual bias. And what I mean by that is the human brain is wired to seek evidence that it is right. So if we have a belief that there is still systematic racism, for example, we will filter for evidence that supports that belief. And that means that's what we will see until we are challenged to notice, the times when we have been welcomed, been treated well, been treated with equality and dignity, and so on. It's called confirmation bias. The subconscious mind would rather die than be wrong. So our beliefs play such a profound role in how we experience life. And they also shape our emotions. And it becomes a very self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I have a belief that says systematic racism is prevalent still, then that's going to drive the emotion, which is fear. And that's going to drive an action, which is I might not travel to certain places, I might not expose myself to new environments. And that might mean that I never discover the evidence that, in fact, there are many good people trying to do good things and support a more equal world. So I create a confirmation bias of that original belief. If I take that original belief and challenge myself and say, well, I don't know, but let me try on the belief that we are now in an age where there still exists some shits, but fundamentally people are good and want good things, a generous-hearted people, well, then I'm going to feel better, right? Because it's a happier thought to move through life with. And then in feeling better and perhaps feeling more courageous, I'm going to take different actions. I might have different conversations. I might open myself to different experiences. And the chances are, through doing that, I will discover evidence that supports that more favorable belief. So the beliefs that we hold, which tend to be formed subconsciously through our early life experience, and if you had a tough early life experience, it's going to have informed your beliefs in ways that maybe don't serve a brilliantly positive outlook, that's going to inform everything I experience. So it's a very powerful practice to try, and it's not easy, but to try and step out of my beliefs and notice that these are stories that I tell based on prior experience, but that prior experience does not mean that my future experience has to be the same. And if I do the things I've always done and think the things I've always thought, I'm likely to experience similar things to those I've always experienced. But if I choose to think something different and do something different, I'm likely to change what I experience. So beliefs are incredibly powerful, and they can empower us or disempower us. And they're all just stories we tell. A belief is just a story. So I always think, why not tell the story that is most empowering? Because you are likely to experience more power then.
Uh, how do you incorporate mindfulness into your work with clients to enhance their executive presence, composure, and ability to manage pressure?
So there are two practices that I advocate for when I'm talking to people about how to remain composed and manage themselves. And it's not just in professional environments, it's in any challenging environment or challenging situation. So on the one hand, it's the model I shared before. It's that learning to become aware of what's happening in your body, learning to notice your emotions, and then using grounding practices, mindfulness practices, of which nose breathing is the simplest and most accessible, but you can also do things like feel the air across the palm of your hands, or rub two fingers together and really focus on feeling the ridges of your fingertip against your thumb tip. Anything that really brings you into the present moment and your body is a brilliant way of using mindfulness to come into the present moment, and using that to down-regulate your nervous system. So that kind of in-life practice of noticing when you're becoming emotional. And I'm not trying to create robots here. This isn't about suppressing or repressing emotion. It's just about learning to notice and choose around emotion. So those embodiment practices really help. But the other thing that's important, and I learned this through my own psychological research when I did my master's in psychology, is that a regular mindfulness meditation practice, which might look like 5 or 10 minutes each morning doing mindfulness meditation. And mindfulness meditation is very specific. People often say, I can't meditate. My brain starts going, I can't empty my thoughts out. That's not the goal of mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness meditation is simply learning to observe yourself, learning to observe your sensations, learning to observe your thoughts, and not trying to do anything with them, not trying to push them away, not trying to empty your mind, not trying to feel or be a certain way, simply observing what is taking place for you. So 5 or 10 minutes of that each day is a really important practice. And the reason for that is when you do that, you create neural pathways to that regulated, present way of feeling, which means that then throughout your day, when an external event triggers some emotion, you've already got a neural pathway created. So your ability to immediately cut to that regulated space is much improved, it's much enhanced. Your ability to stay composed, you can do the kind of informal practice of I feel overwhelmed, breathe and settle. But if you also have a daily 5 or 10 minutes of practicing that, just sitting down calmly and really observing your body and allowing yourself to sort of settle to calmness, then when those events happen that stress you, it's much easier for you to cut to that composed space. Whereas if you're trying to do it in the moment, for many people, it's a more challenging thing, because it is hard when, if someone's shouting at you or something occurs, and it's a stressful moment, it's actually quite hard to go straight to composure. So it's a long-term practice. So a daily formal practice of meditation, mindfulness meditation, coupled with that ABC, I would say is the most powerful way of incorporating mindfulness as a practice into your life to help you show up with more presence and composure. And it's not too onerous, 5-10 minutes a day, and it feels nice. It feels good to create that space around yourself. Will really stand to people.
Do you feel mindful meditation is a healthy approach of forgetting? Is that because accepting the bad memories?
Well, that takes us into another interesting space. So Mindfulness meditation is of itself an extremely powerful discipline. It's extremely powerful for healing. Research shows that people that take an 8-week program in mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is effectively an enhanced version of what I just described, can cure allergies, heal skin problems, reduce chronic inflammation and chronic illness. It's physiologically extremely beneficial because when you regulate your nervous system, down-regulate stress, you reduce and remove inflammation from the body, and you create a much more healing energy. When we're stressed, our immune system shuts down, because what we're signaling to our mind when we're stressed is all of our energy needs to go into fight, flight, ready the muscles, ready the heart. So digestion shuts down, and immune response shuts down, because when we're under mortal threat, those are not important functions within the body. So when we're under long-term chronic stress, we impair our immunity and our digestion. So mindfulness work is extremely helpful from a physiological perspective. Now, if you have past trauma, if you have PTSD, if you have unresolved memories or events that aren't memories but are embodied somewhere within your energetic system, what can happen is that when you sit down to do something like mindfulness meditation, you can experience an almost unbearable physical need to fidget and move, or in that space you create, uncomfortable memories or events flood in. If that occurs, it's usually a very good sign that you are holding something from the past that needs to be released. And there are different things you can do with that. So you can work through it yourself. You can persist with it. And to give you an example of that, there is a meditation technique called the Vipassana meditation, which is effectively a 10-day silent, very extreme mindfulness meditation experience where you meditate for 10 hours a day in silence. You don't talk to another human being. You have no phone, no reading, no writing. And for 10 days, you just meditate. What happens with that is when those very challenging thoughts or physical sensations present themselves, you have no choice but to sit with them. And a bit like peeling the layers of the onion, you know, when they're there and you sit with them, they gradually release. They come up, they release, they come up, they release. So you can really kind of get down to some deeper release through the Vipassana meditation experiences. Having said that, it is hardcore, super challenging. Lots of people start it and don't finish it. I've done 2. They're excruciating, but you really do release. You really do some powerful release. So that's kind of the hardcore way you can use something like meditation to release past wounds, heal trauma, and things like that. You can also you can use somatic work with yourself, and that might look like you're in mindfulness meditation, you feel that some things are coming up, and you might choose to, by somatic work, I mean working with your body. So you might choose to breathe into wherever you're feeling this sensation. Sometimes it can be like a hot spot on your body or an unbearable urge to wriggle. You can allow yourself to wriggle. You might shake. You know, animals, when they've just experienced, like if a duck has an altercation with another duck, it will shake afterwards because it's shaking out the intense energy that built up. And often we carry that energy without realizing it. So if that's showing up for you, you can allow yourself to move, to shake, or to move that part of your body that you're experiencing something come up in. So you can do somatic work. The other thing is, if it's very intense, you can come to someone like me or another hypnotherapist or NLP practitioner or master practitioner to release whatever that is at an energetic, emotional level. And some people need that additional support. If you are aware that you're carrying something and it's too big to do that work on your own, which for some people it will be, then seek out a practitioner that can guide and support you to release it safely. And that's part of the work I do.
How do you create a tailored approach for each of your clients?
A tailored approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, so different people need different things. I have within my toolkit, if you like, a range of different modalities for supporting people, which range from straight coaching. Some people just need some goal setting and accountability, some basic mindset support. NLP, which is of itself a very diverse methodology. There is a lot within NLP as a discipline that you can use to support people. I also have hypnotherapy, energy healing, mindfulness and breath work, and I mentor people more on the leadership side. So typically what I do when I first meet people, the first bit of time I spend with them will be in a sort of diagnostic phase of understanding where they want to get to or what they want to be different, but then really delving into what might be in the way. And I can normally tell very quickly whether someone's block is a surface level something that they just need to change their habits around and maybe address a couple of limiting beliefs, or whether they're carrying something energetically. And based on that, I then design I'm going to call it a treatment plan. It's not treatment in the medical sense. It's an approach to help them release the things that might be in their way. It's very different to classic therapy in that, you know, psychotherapists, counselors will typically be analyzing and working with a person consciously to review the things that happened to them that maybe shaped how they are now experiencing things. My methods are all very future focused. So it's not about reinforcing stories that because, you know, my dad left when I was 4 and that's why I have these issues and that's a problem, because that can kind of that can give us excuses for the things that we're not happy with our life. Well, I can explain it because this happened to me when I was young. Those aren't very supportive stories we tell ourselves. So I'm interested in, well, what do you want to experience? What is it that you're trying to create? And then some of those stories will come out. And then we can examine, okay, is this a conscious story we can change? Do we need to change it subconsciously? Is there a lodged emotional or energetic wound that we need to release from the body, from the energetic system? So, you know, we tailor what happens next based on what shows up in each individual. And some people just want executive coaching. You know, some people just want to get promotion to the boardroom. That's nice and straightforward and fun, because it's always fun helping people realize that it's a lot more straightforward than they thought, and they just need to believe in themselves, which is often all that's going on there. And sometimes there's a language to be spoken. But yeah, I tailor it based on what shows up as being in between where the person is and what they want to be experiencing. And whatever's in that space, we get rid of. And I'm lucky in that I have such a broad toolkit. I've not yet met someone who I haven't been able to create the shift for, even though often they come to me after years of therapy, prescribed medication, addiction issues. You know, people come with all sorts.
Yeah.
But because we work at the energetic and subconscious level, there's really a lot you can shift for people, as well as educating them on how to show up consciously in new habits, practices, and sometimes people have to release an old identity. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story on this. I used to have a story that I would tell about myself, which is that I was an obese child. This was just part of my story. And as a woman, I've always had some challenges around my relationship with food and exercise. And I had this story, I was an obese child, and I would tell it everywhere. Like there was so, you know, I would have met you, and within 10 minutes into the conversation, I would have snuck in, I was an obese child. Like it was so part of my personal identity within myself. And I was doing some personal development work, completely unrelated, which required me to look at photos of myself as a child. So I dug out an old photo album that my mum had made for my 30th birthday, which had photos of me all throughout my childhood. So I was looking at these photos, and what I noticed was, right, age 6, slim child, age 7, slim child, age 8, slim child, age 9, a little bit of puppy fat, age 10, definitely chubby, age 11, definitely chubby, age 12, slim, 13, slim, 14, slim. So this story, I was an obese child, when I was confronted with the photo evidence, I realized was just a story. I had a couple of years of being fat. And the rest of the time I was completely normal sized. I was a normal, healthy child. So in that moment, I let that story go. It wasn't even really conscious. I just saw it for the lie that it was, and I stopped identifying as this person that used to be an obese child. Well, my relationship with food and exercise changed that day. This happened about a year ago and has never gone back. I lost a stone without trying. I exercise really regularly now, and I don't have to push through resistance to do it. My relationship with food has transformed, all because I've let go of this identity level narrative. And that's often what shows up in the work I do with clients, is without realizing it, they are very attached to a story that gives them their identity. And it often sits beneath the level of conscious awareness. When they let that story go, the behaviors and habits or experiences they've been trying to shift effortlessly release, because it was never about the behavior or habit. It was about the story they were telling at the very level of their identity. And I've done it on myself accidentally in the example I just gave. Powerful stuff.
My next question is about the woo-woo concept. I could explain it, but I think it'll come better from you. Can you explain it to the audience?
Yeah, so I mean, woo-woo is the label attached to things that are not easily explained by conventional science. Energy work, crystals, this kind of thing. It's all seen as very woo-woo. Energy healing, I don't know what else really. Law of attraction, manifestation work is often considered a bit woo. Anything to do with healing, chakras, meridians, the moon. This is generally seen as the preserve of woo-woo. But as a scientifically minded person who is very much in that world, what I find fascinating is that almost all of those concepts have a scientific foundation, but it's a scientific foundation that is largely ignored by conventional science. So the world of woo-woo actually is extremely robust. Not everyone uses it that way or understands the science, but there's a lot that sits beneath the surface when it comes to what is called woo-woo.
Okay, so the question is, can you share an inspiring story of a client who overcame significant challenges and achieved remarkable success by harnessing the power of their subconscious mind and embracing woo-woo concepts?
Yes. So I had a client quite recently who, when she came to me, considered herself, and in fact, I believe had diagnosed complex post-traumatic stress disorder due to a traumatic childhood family background, had an extremely problematic relationship with her family of origin. So her mother in particular, her sisters, her father, was feeling extremely overlooked and sidelined professionally, had struggled to form a lasting relationship, and was experiencing some health challenges. So in particular, she was carrying extra weight that she didn't want to carry, but was struggling to shift. We went through a process. She participated in a program I run called the Chrysalis, which is a small group program that focuses on this releasing the baggage of the past that is preventing us from moving successfully into the future that we want. So through that process, we looked at a number of different things. So we looked at how her prior experiences could be viewed as things that she could learn from, that gave her gifts of strength and knowledge, that empowered her. So her frame on them was very negative, that they were very traumatic, but actually we subconsciously rewrote the story so that she could see it differently, as almost like she was the heroine of a story where she persisted through really difficult times and it made her strong and powerful. We released the negative emotions because she was having a lot of anxiety in particular, where the old fears from the old trauma was showing up in the present day. And And having kind of cleared the decks on the old beliefs, the old emotions, and reframing her story of her identity based on her past and making it a more empowering story, she then created a vision for her future. And things within that vision included marriage, more green space in her life, more success at work, greater health, feeling slimmer, stronger, healthier. And we started working with her neurology, her subconscious mind, to focus her attention on those things that she wanted rather than on that difficult past that was so often showing up in her day-to-day life. I mean, it's fascinating. We are exposed to 11 million bits of information in any given second as human beings. We can only experience about 138 of them. So we are like, our neurology, our mind is one big filtering machine. If you think about it, 11 million bits of information down to the 138 we can actually take in. So which 138 we take in completely defines our experience of our reality. So what we're doing in some of the work I do is shifting the 138 from the 138 that say complex PTSD, challenging families, unhealthy identity, to 138 that say, here are all the things that are possible, here are the opportunities, here are the strengths, here are the learnings. Halfway through the program, literally within about a week of starting to shape the vision, having done all of the clearing work, she excitedly WhatsApped me and said, something amazing has just happened. I can't remember the specific sequence of events, but a friend of her sister's had spotted her profile, maybe in a dating app or something, and it had led to him contacting her. And he'd been in her circle for ages. He was a friend of her sister's, but he'd contacted her. They'd ended up talking, and she had, within a couple of days of them talking regularly, she was coming away saying, this is a thing. So this is like 3 days after putting marriage on her vision board. This guy pops up out of the blue that feels like her perfect guy. And by the time she'd finished the program, they were regularly dating. They were considering moving in together. This is a 6-month program. This happened about month 3 of a 6-month program. And by month 6 of a 6-month program, she was in a settled, steady relationship. She'd lost weight. She felt healthy and strong. She planted a terrace garden. So even though it was wholly of her own doing, she'd created this green space that she's envisaged, and her relationship with her family had completely transformed to the point that both her mother and sister described it as being like night and day, how she seemed to them. So all of these difficulties she started out with evaporated just through this kind of releasing the old stuff, which made way for her to choose, here is what I want to be experiencing. And just the act of stating that, making it visible in front of her, led to things popping into her field of experience. She was manifesting more of the life that she wanted. So she's a great case study.
My next question would lead into that. In your opinion, is manifesting a tangible or effective practice, or is it merely a psychological phenomenon?
I think it's those two things. I think the fact that it's a psychological phenomena is what makes it a tangible practice. I think there's a lot of stuff written and spoken about law of attraction and manifestation, which is really unhelpful. So, for example, a lot of people think, if I sit and meditate on the stuff I want, if I really, really focus on wanting it, it'll appear. And actually, that is the antithesis of law of attraction, because the way this works from a kind of quantum science perspective is we get back what we put out energetically. And this is all very well substantiated through solid science, but it's unconventional science. And I can talk a little bit about that. But when we send out an energetic frequency that says, I really want this thing, what we get back is more wanting, because the frequency we're sending out is wanting. So there are two sides to the science of manifestation. One is the neuroscience of it, and that's about this neurology I described. The reticular activating system, the filtering part of the brain, defines what we notice. So there is a deep psychology to that. And this has also been very robustly evident. So there was an experiment that took place on the concept of luck. 2 samples of people were sent through a shopping centre that money had been hidden in, as if someone had dropped money in a couple of different places. One group of the people in the experiment had rated themselves as being unlucky, and the other group had rated themselves as being lucky. And they were both sent through these groups were sent through the shopping centre where the same amounts of money were hidden or placed in the same places for both groups. In the unlucky group, not a single one of them spotted the money. In the lucky group, a statistically significant proportion of them spotted the money, because their reticular activating system, their neurology, said to them, "You're lucky." They noticed things that reinforced that belief, "I'm lucky." Luck isn't real. We create it through our beliefs. We notice opportunities when we believe we are lucky. So it's real in the sense that, it's a belief, but it's not something that's like gifted to you at the moment of your birth. You're a lucky person or you're an unlucky person. It's, if your early experiences tell you that you are lucky, you will go through life feeling lucky. And so you will notice things that the person that believes they're unlucky will not notice. So there is a sound psychological basis to the concept of manifestation. If you are focused on your goals, on your vision, not in a wanty sense, but just you're giving it your attention, you will see more of the opportunities to create that goal, to create that vision. That's the psychology of it. Then from a quantum perspective, and there's a real distinction. So conventional science is based on physics, right? Physics is the conventional barometer.
Alchemy.
Sorry?
Alchemy.
Alchemy, to a degree, yeah, but conventional physics is like the overarching model. It's what we're taught in school. The laws of quantum physics completely go against many of the laws of conventional physics. Einstein, in the second half of his career, became deeply frustrated because he was searching for a unified theory that could make sense of both conventional physics and quantum physics, and he never managed to. But in quantum physics, energy speaks to energy on the other side of the planet. Particles pop in and out of existence. Things happen that conventional physics would say are not possible.
Like string theory. If you talk about Einstein, string theory.
Exactly. And Bohr and all of the kind of quantum physics names, but it's never quite made its way into the mainstream. It's not taught in schools. You can study it at Oxford University at PhD level if you're lucky, but it's a very niche discipline. What we know from quantum physics is that energetic frequencies attract like energetic frequencies. So if we are all electromagnetic in nature, we are made of energy. If you go down small enough, we stop being made of particle matter and we are waveform. Well, like, things that feel solid to touch are actually 99.9999999% empty space if you get down small enough, and we're kind of glued together by energetic uniformity. And we attract like frequency. It's why, if you bang a tuning fork over here, you can break a glass over here. Okay, these two separate things, that energetic frequency can affect this thing over here. So when we give out an energetic frequency of wanting, we are likely to create more wanting in our life. The secret, and it's not an easy one, but the secret to manifestation and law of attraction is to curate our vibration. This starts to sound quite woo. Is to curate our vibration so that we are vibrating at the level of the things we want to attract. And one of the most powerful high frequency practices you can undertake is gratitude. Because think about it, if the frequency you send out is I am grateful, then the things you attract will be things to be grateful for. Whereas if the frequency you send out is I am wanting, then what you will attract is more things to want that you don't have. So I think that the center point practice within any law of attraction manifestation attempt to learn to feel deeply grateful for what you already have. And yes, still have your vision board, have your goals, like put your focus on the future you are creating, but manage your energy to feel as if you've already got the emotions you would have if you already had the things, because then you attract more of that back to you. And then whether you get the thing or not, you're going to feel great anyway, because you're managing your energy to be the energy of receiving gratitude. And that feels good, you know, whatever its source.
Do you believe in the matrix? And if we know the right formula, we could break it.
That's such a good question.
Manifest is like one of those things to break it.
I think if I look at my own life, and I would say my interest and practice of manifestation has only really become a conscious thing in much more recent years as I've been in this world. But if I look over the course of my life, I have had, I think, capability for making pictures in my head become reality in my life. And that was the case long before I started looking into concepts like law of attraction manifestation. I think what I've done is been able to make sense of that now since I've learned more about it. Are we in a matrix? Can you bend or kind of hack the matrix? There is so little we understand about the nature of consciousness and being human, about the very concepts like existence. So I think honestly, to think we can understand any of this stuff at a really kind of, I mean, I've just said I like science and scientific evidence, but, you know, really, I think half of that's a big joke, because we can only experience anything we experience through the prism of our ability to sense things, and that is limited to our senses. And there is so much more than the things we can sense. You know, look at the animal kingdom. Dogs can hear frequencies we can't hear. You know, there are animals that can experience things that we cannot experience, but we know through measurement that they can experience. So there is a whole lot beyond our perceptual capability that exists that we don't know. So are we in a matrix? It depends how you define matrix. I believe that our human experience of existence is a tiny fragment of what is actually going on. You only have to look out at the night sky to have a sense of really how little we understand. You only have to look at the depth of the ocean and how much of it has actually been explored by mankind to know there is so much more than our human experience gives us access to. And that being the case, who knows what we can tap into that is beyond our conscious level of awareness. We are definitely interconnected at a kind of higher consciousness level. And again, there's great evidence for that. There is good evidence that if you teach a rat something on this side of the world, and then go and teach a rat the same something on the other side of the world, it will learn it in half the time if a group of rats on this side of the world have learned it. There's a funny example of this. Apparently, somewhere in Wales, sheeps learned that they could get over cattle grids by rolling. And within the same time frame, this odd behaviour was observed in sheep in Wales. It was also observed in sheep in New Zealand. Now, they did not have WhatsApp. The sheep in Wales were not saying, get this, you can get over the cattle grids by rolling. Yeah. There is a morphogenic field that connects us at a consciousness level. And when you understand a bit about quantum physics, you can see how that must be the case. And there's lots of evidence of those kind of occurrences. So you can call it the matrix. I don't know what I call it. I suppose I call it a collective consciousness, but it represents a fabric of which we have a tiny fragment of understanding, and a lot is possible that people maybe don't realize.
Yes. I was listening to you. I maybe think about inventions being created at the same time and patents. So I was trying to like look it up real fast as you was talking. Yeah, I'll come back to it. But earlier you mentioned something about like good energy and integrity. So I wanted to ask you a question about that. How do
Yeah.
you assist clients in maintaining integrity and preserving their energy while pursuing ambitious goals?
So my belief is that the key to preserving your energy is to be in alignment with yourself. And what I mean by that is, I meet a lot of people who are either moving along a path that without realizing it does not represent alignment to them. So they're doing things that they don't believe in. They're spending a lot of time in environments that they don't like or they don't believe in. And that therefore are kind of pulling away from their most positive high vibration energy. Or they are presenting a version of themselves, presenting an identity that isn't who they really are, which also creates a deep kind of energetic drag. If I go to work every day and I hide a chunk of who I really am, so I'm turning up at work and a part of my energy is spent on protecting and hiding, this aspect of my character,
Mm-hmm.
that is going to use up my energy. And kind of in the gap between who I really am and how I'm showing up, a lot of energy is lost. And also a lot of fear is created because there's always that fear of being exposed. I'm projecting a version of myself. If they find the real person, there's fear of exposure there. It can create imposter syndrome. It can impair confidence. It can impair performance. So when you close that gap and the person you show up as is the person you know yourself to be, you really unleash a much higher level of energy, productivity, and success. So alignment to yourself, within yourself, being integrated. And a lot of people aren't. A lot of people have their home persona and their work persona. It's very destructive long term. You have to get integrated. And when you do that, your capacity for success, for high performance, for feeling good, skyrocket. And you need to be on the right path. We all have a calling of sorts. It takes many of us a long time, some of us a lifetime, if we're lucky, to find what that calling is. But if we move through our adult years feeling a bit empty, feeling a bit frustrated, not really feeling passionate about the work that we do, which for most of us takes up the majority of our time, or in a relationship that we don't feel truly aligned to, where we're squashed or where we don't really connect with the other person, whether it's professional or personal, when we have that misalignment, it becomes a deep drain on our energy. But to make a change can take huge courage. If you've been married for someone for 20 years and you're only just starting to realize, actually, this does not support alignment for me. I don't believe in the things this person believes in. You've got kids together, you've got a mortgage together, you live together. To create a pathway out of that is incredibly courageous and challenging. Sometimes you can rehabilitate alignment by communicating more effectively. We're back to where we started. You can learn to have a more effective communication with that person. And if it's a professional misalignment, you need to take action. You spend 8 hours a day in your job. If it doesn't fill your heart with joy, interest, motivation, you really need to take action. So I think when it comes to management of energy and being in your integrity, alignment is the key. But we often buy into other people's stories about what we should be doing and what good looks like. So you really have to learn to connect to your own intuition, your deepest values, hear your calling, because you'll keep being given signs. The universe will keep giving you signs, and they will get louder until the point that you start listening, I think.
Yeah, you're so right about people having their work life and their personal life separate and not integrated. Because like in America, we got two saying, I don't know the same in London. Don't bring your work home and don't bring your problems home to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I can kind of get with that from the perspective of, if you have a stressful day in the office, or if there are, problems that you can't do anything with until the following day, you might as well leave them there rather than carrying that energy. And that speaks, that's like what we talked about earlier. Regulate yourself, decide, can I take action? If I can't, leave it there until I can. But that concept that, I leave the office and I become a different person, or there are views that I hold that I hide, it's terribly unhealthy. I think in any aspect of life, if we are suppressing an aspect of ourselves, I think it's very unhealthy for us. Now, there is a difference between suppressing or repressing and regulating. So, if we have an angry flare-up aspect to our character, it's very important to regulate that and to find healthier ways to express it. But it's not healthy to suppress it. It's not healthy to kind of push it down and, sprout a boil because actually we've got all this unresolved anger. So I do draw an important distinction between regulation and repression. However, we need to be able to be our whole selves wherever we go, because anywhere where we are not being our whole selves, it doesn't mean we have to express all aspects of our character at all times, but if we feel that we have to hide something, that's an energy drain for sure, because a little part of our neurology, of our brain, is going over to that shielding, that hiding, and creating fear over what if they see the truth. That's just no way to live. Definitely harms our energy.
We're talking about how everything's connected, and I mentioned that several inventions was created around the same time. So yeah, I got a short list. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So 1600s, Isaac Newton and Gottfried Leibniz both discovered calculus. 1770s, Carl Wilhelm Skill and Joseph Presley discovered oxygen. 1800s, Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace both discovered natural selection. 1839, Louis Daguerre and Harry Fox Talbot invented the first photographic methods. 1869, Louis Ducos de Duharan and Charles Cross presented the earliest workable method of color photography on the same day. 1950s, John Salk and Albert Bruce Sabin invented the polio vaccine. Takaki Kajata and Arthur B. McDonald are jointly awarded the Nobel Prize for finding the neutrosis half mass. Oh, yeah, I butchered that. Tronos half mass. I don't know what that is.
Me neither.
Neutrinos. Neutrinos is, let's see what it is. It says a neutrinos is a pheromone that interacts only via the weak interaction and gravity. So it got something to do with gravity.
Yeah, and pheromones are those
Yeah.
hormones that we give off that are like scent based, but again, often function at the subconscious level.
Yeah,
So that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it affects gravity somewhere and somehow.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Yes, I didn't know that. What are some common misconceptions or challenges related to the power of subconscious mind?
I don't know. I don't know about misconceptions as such. I just think a lot of people don't realize how much power exists within the subconscious mind. And what I mean by that is, if you think about the human body and the physiology of being alive, most of the human functions are run by the subconscious mind. You don't consciously think, I must breathe now, I must digest my food now, I must dream now, I must, as a woman, I must ovulate now. None of this happens consciously. Our subconscious mind is responsible for a vast swathe of our human functions, and for animals, an even vaster swathe because they have less conscious cognitive capability. So when you realize that, you think, gosh, what would be possible if I could hack into that? Blood pressure, immunity, respiration, reproduction, digestion, fertility, cell renewal, growth. The list goes on. There are some theories, and some of this has been validated with science, that say that everything that ever happened to us is stored somewhere in the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
There is also, think about cellular renewal. So your ability to heal a wound, to perhaps let go of cancer. That gets into contentious territory, but concepts like healing, these are all run by the subconscious mind. So I don't know so much whether there are misconceptions. I don't hear so many. I just don't hear people really recognizing and talking about how much power exists within the subconscious mind. And it makes me think of that film Limitless, where a guy can take a tablet and unleash the power, like a greater degree of mind power. Because I think, well, if you can hack certain things, you can unleash extraordinary power through the subconscious mind. For example, there have been studies done on the power of visualization that say, okay, if you're a gym goer and you go and push weights, whatever, 4 times a week, and that improves your strength to a certain degree, and that represents 100% of your capability to build strength. People that visualize pushing weights in the gym can still achieve about 30% muscle tone improvement against that 100% if they were actually pushing weights. So just by visualizing, exercising, you trick your body into doing things using the power of your subconscious mind. So there's huge capacity to make things happen by learning how to harness the power of your subconscious mind. And whilst I've got all sorts of tools to help people do that, I also know I've barely scratched the surface of it, and I don't know whether we ever can. All of that interconnectedness of everything clearly happens at the subconscious level. We sometimes feel it, I think, that stuff that isn't conscious but is more felt, and I think intuition is quite a subconscious function. But yeah, there's a lot there that I think is not really understood or discussed, barely scratched the surface of. People just aren't talking about this stuff, and it's life-changing.
Do you feel that this are the biggest obstacles that prevent individuals from creating success?
I think for many people, the things that they have stored or accumulated at the subconscious level are the things standing between them and success. And I think sometimes people are extremely successful, but they're creating that success in ways that have them feeling depleted, stressed, down. You can create success through effort, or you can hack the subconscious mind and create it with ease and alignment and more effortlessly. It's like if the conscious mind is a rowboat on the surface of a lake or an ocean, the subconscious mind is like a submarine beneath the surface, and they're attached by a piece of string. If you row really, really hard, you can create some motion in a certain direction, but you're dragging a submarine with you. If you can learn to have that submarine move in the same direction as what you're consciously trying to achieve, your rowing becomes easy and effortless. You can, relax and let the submarine pull you. So I think I mean, success is a very individual concept. Definitely subconscious blocks show up and get in people's way from experiencing the life they want to experience. And some people create what many people would call success, but are deeply unhappy. And they would also benefit from doing the subconscious work.
Yes.
No.
Do you encourage your clients to prioritize their well-being as a foundation for success?
Yeah, 100%. I think a real start point is learning to create your emotions, and that includes self-care. There's a strong connection between the mind, body, and your emotions, and that works in both directions. So what I mean by that is you can use movement to improve your mood because movement releases hormones that make you feel better. You can use power pose to increase your confidence by hacking your hormonal system.
Yeah.
When you do power pose, you may know this, you release.
Your hands in your hips, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When you make yourself bigger, you release confidence hormones. So that's kind of outside in work. But equally, if there are subconscious persistent thoughts that are not being addressed and tackled, that can reduce your motivation to go and exercise and to make yourself feel better. So actually what I advocate for is to work at the level of your physical behaviors and habits, to learn to curate your emotions to be higher vibration. So to actively take control of being calmer, more peaceful, more happier, more joyful, more of the time, and not always looking outside of yourself to create that, but realizing you carry it inside, just like you carry the negative emotions. To work on the way you think. And that's partly about your internal dialogue, but it's also about the things you say. We often use unhelpful language, which then creates and shapes our reality. And then to work on this alignment piece. So that's about, am I on the right path energetically? Am I doing the things that I'm called to do, or am I suppressing that aspect of my sort of grand life design? So when you get those 4 layers lined up, your behaviors, your emotions, your thoughts, and your kind of, I'll use the word spiritual, but that kind of higher order why we're all here calling, I think that's the point at which profound change takes place. And there's not really a finish line. It's not like you do it once and then it's done. It's actually a lifelong commitment to living in that kind of alignment. But it's very joyful.
Okay. How do you help your clients from self-sabotage?
We're probably back to the ABC. Self-sabotage is often simply about thought patterns, sometimes habit patterns, that are either just bad habits we've accumulated that we need to build awareness of. Sometimes just becoming aware, breathing and choosing better is enough. Sometimes we have to push through a bit of discomfort to do that. Sometimes those saboteur patterns are a sign that there is something in our identity or our beliefs or our value system or our energetic system that we are holding on to that's out of date information. So often, the thing between a person and what they want to experience is an attachment to an old version of themselves that their subconscious mind is protecting, because the safe, familiar known, even when it's rubbish, can feel a lot more secure to our subconscious mind than that brave new future that we'd love to move towards, but is kind of an unknown and requires us to kind of transform into being quite a different person. The subconscious mind, its primary goal for us is to protect us and keep us safe. So it avoids all discomfort, all fear, keeps us small. And if that means we stay in the familiar, even if the familiar is rubbish for us, it will do its utmost to do that. So what looks like saboteur behavior often has a secondary gain, and that secondary gain might be to keep us in the familiar, to keep us safe, to keep us in the old habits, because even though we don't like them, from a subconscious perspective, they feel safer and more familiar than this unknown future that is the other side of the big leap of, into something new. So with saboteur, it's often about understanding if there's a root cause in past trauma or sort of latent issues, exploring what the secondary gain might be, and then using some of those more conscious practices like mindfulness to give people the courage and ability to regulate, that they can push through some of that discomfort to make change happen and kind of take the reins of the subconscious mind.
Okay, you mentioned outdated information. So my next question is towards that. Okay, how do you stay up to date on the latest research and development in your field of psychology, NLP, and neuroscience? And how do you incorporate new insight into your coaching and therapy practice?
Yeah, so I'm a slightly compulsive researcher, and I'm absolutely passionate about what I do. I love my work. So I'm just always reading, training, building new methods. I expose myself to a lot of self-development. And if I experience something that I find really effective, I'll go and train in it, I'll incorporate it into my practice. And so those are the main ways, really. I'm always researching and reading. And then when I find something that has an applied capacity to it,
Mhm.
I will research that further, deepen my knowledge, and if it feels worthwhile, I'll become a practitioner. So for example, I do a lot of work in the release space. I typically use NLP and hypnotherapy and something called timeline therapy to do emotional release work. I was recently chatting to a fellow hypnotherapist who uses something called the Sedona method. We chatted a bit about this. She was very excited about it. So I then went and researched Sedona method. I went and bought the book. I started looking at Sedona method. I didn't find it that great. And I shared this with her. She then said, let me take you through a session. I want to give you an experience of it. So she took me through a release session using the Sedona method. And it completely shifted my understanding of what I'd read in the book. Because often information isn't the same as transformation. So she then took me through it, and it really enriched my understanding of the stuff I'd read in the book. And I've since been then using this Sedona method on myself. It's like an ongoing release method. And it's really important as a practitioner that you are kind of cleaning and clearing your own energy all the time, because you take on a lot from your clients that you have to then be able to release as well. So I've now been using the Sedona method to do my own regular clearing, and at some point I will probably go and then sort of formally certify so that I can build that into my practice. So I kind of believe that if you're always scanning, and I'm definitely always scanning for new methods, the latest things, the things that are right for you and in alignment with your way of working kind of pop for you, and you get called towards them, and then you can go and pursue them. So I'm just always scanning for what's working, what's news, what's big. And I also like to create methods from other methods. So one of the things that I most enjoy is I'm not a kind of by the book practitioner. I learned to do something this way, so this is how I do it. I'll often start in a process over here with someone, see that they've run up against something and think, oh, this method from this other place is going to help them get to the next level. And then I'll introduce that, and then we might end up in the third place. And I think that makes my practice quite unique, because I'm very confident in, it's back to the tailoring thing. I'm very confident in seeing what a person needs and thinking, right, this technique is going to help them loosen this. Yeah.
I had to look up timeline therapy. So let me know if this is accurate. It says the technique relies on reprogramming a person's response and behavior mechanisms in such a way to bring out a healthier sense of well-being.
I mean, that's a very broad brush description of what it can do. And timeline as a method is one of the NLP methods, but you can also use it as an entire therapy in its own self. And it is a reprogramming method. The best way I could describe it is, if you and I had a blazing row, and then tomorrow you discovered something about me, like maybe I just had a terrible diagnosis, or I just lost a loved one, or something like that, it would completely change how you felt about the row we'd had today. You know, any anger that you'd felt in the moment would probably be replaced by compassion and understanding that the reason I'd been showing up the way I was showing up was because of something I'd experienced. timeline therapy as a kind of complete therapy is really interesting, because what it does is help you release emotions by finding those paradigm shifting pieces of information that rewire and release the emotions that you associate with all of the events of your life. So it's like that paradigm shift that comes with, I have an argument with someone, I feel it, I feel deep dislike and anger about them. And then the following day, I discover something that completely shifts how I feel about them. I can no longer feel that anger that I felt towards them before I knew this about them.
Mm-hmm.
Timeline therapy does that on all of the major negative emotions, that the new information comes from your own subconscious mind. So it's like if you look at an event from your past, it's like stepping out of it and looking at it from a completely different perspective that gives you access to a different perception on that event. And in doing so, transforms your ability to feel negative emotions about that event. But what's interesting about timeline is you do it on the root cause event relating to an emotion, which is almost always before language and memory, and often not from your own life cycle. So usually, well, it's about 50-50. Sometimes people are releasing events that happened when they were tiny babies. Often people are releasing stuff that they inherited from their parents. Sometimes people get stuff from past lives. And I always say it doesn't matter what your belief system is, because in much the same way that when your subconscious mind is dreaming, it's processing events using symbolism and metaphor and stories. If I took you through timeline therapy and you said, I feel like I went back to 7 lifetimes ago when I was this completely, I was in Shakespeare's time and I was living in Britain somewhere. Well, whether that's real or whether that's just your subconscious mind finding a metaphor or a story that it can use to release the negative emotion doesn't actually matter. What matters is that you gain an insight that allows you to reframe that root cause emotion. And then we apply that to every experience of anger you've had since, which sounds like it would be a very lengthy process, but actually your subconscious mind can do it in a second and it's gone. And you've got that new paradigm on every experience of that negative emotion. So it's a really extraordinary methodology. It's really fun as well.
Okay, my next question, I'm gonna give you 2 examples in my own family personal life. So I got 2 cousins, and both these cousins are part of the LGBTQ plus I community. And these 2 cousins, we haven't seen them in years. Like since they was adults, we haven't laid eyes on them. One even left the state, and I think he's in Seattle or something like that. I doubt his mother even talked to him. And so my next question leads into these 2 people aspects. Like one still here in the city, New York City, but yet he don't come around for no family gatherings, no family reunions, no Thanksgiving, not to say hi, not a phone call, not a Facebook message, nothing. So my question is, how do you help clients navigate difficult emotions such as grief, loss, or trauma, and support them in finding healing and strength during challenging times?
Yeah, yeah. So primarily holding space for that person to experience what they're experiencing is one of the most important things I do. And that should be true of any therapist or supportive practitioner, whether they're a coach or a counselor or a psychotherapist or an NLP practitioner or whatever, because I think creating a safe, non-judgmental space for someone to feel what they are feeling and express it and be with it is really vital. So with that as a foundation, with that as a given, I might then invite someone to reflect on 3 specific dimensions of their experience. The first of those is to look at what here is within my control. Well, the things within my control are the way I storytell these experiences, my emotions relating to these experiences, and my actions relating to these experiences. And that will create a whole category of opportunity that could improve a situation. we often don't take action because it might involve some pain or some discomfort or some risk or some fear. There's often a lot more we can do to change a situation. I'm not talking about grief through death, through loss, but when there are difficult family relationships, for example. There's a second category then, which is things that I don't have control over, but that I could influence. And almost anything relating to another person, I have some influence over. And again, when we realize that, it often indicates actions we could be taking, but that we're not taking, maybe because of our pride, or maybe because of our woundedness that someone has left us or rejected us, or kind of distanced themselves. So you've got this category of control, you've got this category of influence, and then you've got another category, which is things I can't do anything about. And typically, there are only two things that I can't do anything about. Those are things that have already happened and the weather. Those are about the only two things in life we have zero influence or control over, things that have happened in the past and the weather. So when you kind of explore this framework, the first question to ask yourself then is, okay, there are all these things I have control over. There are all of these things that I could influence. What actions could I take to exert control or to have influence? And that helps us become more effective at managing the environments, the relationships, the experiences, the landscape beyond ourselves. And then in that third column, things we can do absolutely nothing about. The question becomes, am I giving emotion to something that I can do absolutely nothing about? And then we get into the release work. If I have an emotion of hurt, for example, over events from the past, if I've taken action in relation to the person that hurt me, there's really nothing more I can do. It's all done and dusted, but that hurt is persisting for me. The only sensible thing is to do whatever work I need to do to release that hurt. Because otherwise, I'm going through life carrying that emotion. No one else gives a damn. It's only me. It's that, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to fall over. If I'm carrying negative emotion and there is absolutely nothing I can do about the events that have created that negative emotion, I need to learn to release that emotion in healthy ways. Otherwise, it becomes embodied, it drags me down, it harms my energy, and it prevents me from experiencing the things I want to experience.
Yes, and you're so right about that. We don't care, but and they had we do, because these two cousins I mentioned, they never gave us a chance to either express how we feel or tell them how we feel. They just disappeared, And one story is my oldest cousin out of the first cousins, he ran into one of them, and he was at a McDonald's, and he was dressed, not what he was used to be dressed in, and I guess he didn't when they met, he didn't feel ashamed or nothing like that, maybe he didn't show it, but and that's one of the last times one of my family members seen one of them. And like you said, we never gave us a chance. And so that's the same rights you give to people that didn't give their family members a chance to either express how they feel.
I think in a situation like that, if you have a means of contacting that person, you can create influence. You can speak your truth. You can reach out to that person, whether it's by social media or email, and say, you step back from the family. You never gave us a chance to explore our relationship, since you came out or made these life decisions. And there's an opportunity to influence that. Now, you don't know what you will be met with. It takes some courage. You might be rejected. But I think it can also be really helpful to have compassion and try and see the world through the eyes of the other person in order to understand their behavior better. Typically, people are being driven out of their emotional reactions. And maybe when someone comes out, and maybe if they fear that they are in a more conventional family that won't accept them, then they feel safer not even risking the conversation, not even allowing views to be expressed, we often fear judgment, and it leads us to hide or close down. It's the flight bit of fight, flight.
Mm.
So maybe you can influence.
Mm.
If you take steps to influence and you're met with resistance or rejection, at that point, I think it's about working on the emotions that causes. And I think a really helpful model there is to think about the distinction between attachment and commitment. We often attach ourselves to the way we hope things would be.
Mm.
And then when things aren't like that, negative emotion comes in. But I think it's really helpful to think, if I have committed to experiencing things in a certain way, and I've done everything I can to create that outcome for myself, for this relationship, for this family, if I've taken all of the actions I can take, and if I've been deeply committed, and sometimes that takes courage, then being attached doesn't serve anything. There's a real difference between being attached. I wanted it to be like this, but often we don't take committed action in service of that. Whereas if we take committed action, but we accept that we can only do so much, and the outcome will either be what we hoped or not, non-attachment, which is also a mindfulness principle, is a really great thing to strive for. I want this outcome. I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to take action in service of it, but I'm also going to accept that if it involves another person or things beyond my control, sometimes I won't get the outcome I want. And if I release myself from attachment, I don't have to feel bad. But if I'm attached, I'm going to feel bad when things don't go the way I hoped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right about that. I didn't think about it like that, and now that you say that, like I'm his cousin, so like I don't have no judgment, but his mother's very religious, so I can understand why he would move to a whole nother state and never
Yeah.
contact nobody,
Yeah.
But like his brother, for example, said he always knew, he knew since he was a baby that his brother was like that. He's
Yeah.
like, so it was no point of trying to hide because like he would be accepted because he always knew.
Yeah. But imagine if he knew that there was that level of acceptance. He might very well have been informed by his knowledge of his mother's religion, meaning that he would face rejection, or he might face rejection. But imagine if he knew that elsewhere in the family there was complete acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
People were relaxed about it, but that fear perhaps prevents him from leaving himself open to rejection and judgment and hurt.
Yeah, yeah, because his brother believes that people are born like that because his brother was born like that. He really feels his
Yeah,
brother was born like that, so he would have been accepted.
yeah.
So my next question, what advice would you give to an aspiring coach or therapist who wants to incorporate woo-woo concepts and holistic approaches in their own practice while maintaining credible and professionalism?
Yeah. So a couple of different parts to that. If you are a coach or therapist moving into this space, you have to be in your integrity when it comes to doing your own work. You cannot take people through transformations and breakthroughs if you have not experienced them yourself, I believe, because you're not in your integrity talking about the efficacy of things if you are still stuck, unable to break through something. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It doesn't mean you have to have complete self-mastery. No one does. I definitely don't. But I have broken through a lot. I've changed a lot. I've improved a lot. There's very little in my life that I have deep dissatisfaction with that I'm not taking action or have taken action around. So I think you have to be on your own journey in order to take others on that journey. That's, I think, the first principle. The second is you have to be in your integrity from an alignment perspective. I'm a very pragmatic, scientifically minded person, and most people consider what I do a little bit woo. For me, faith is not enough. I have to be able to speak about some of why this can work in slightly conventional, rational terms, even though I'm aware that it's not that conventional and rational what I do. Not everyone needs that. If you have deep faith and belief in these things without needing to research some of why they work scientifically, great. But if you don't really get it, aren't really into it, don't start using crystals to heal people. You know, it's like you have to be in your integrity. So I think from the woo-woo aspect specifically, the primary thing is be in your integrity, be in alignment, and do your own work. I think that's one aspect of it. The other thing I will say is there are many coaches, healers, therapists out there who are incredible at what they do and cannot make a living. Being successful in the world I inhabit is not just about being great at what you do. You also have to be great at running a business. You can't, you know, otherwise you're like a bird with one wing. You're going to fly around in circles. You have to price yourself effectively. You have to be able to make a living, because if your gift to the world is that you have a talent for healing people, for unlocking people's potential, that's my gift. If I charge people £30 an hour and can't afford to pay my bills because of it, and I'm working 12-hour days to try and make that work, I can't do self-care, I can't do my own work, I can't make my business successful, and I end up having to go and get another job in corporate leadership, and then my gift is no longer being shared. So it's so important that not only do you give time and self-development to honing your craft, but that you learn business fundamentals. I'm really lucky. I came to this from a business background with marketing, sales, business leadership in my background. That side of it was easy for me. I had to build on doing the work. Many people are deeply talented when it comes to healing, but often those people that have a call to healing feel very uncomfortable about charging fair prices, aren't very organized and confident when it comes to marketing and, you know, pricing effectively and building programs and doing the tech aspect of running an online business in my case. So you really have to have balance. You have to do, there are 3 pillars: do your own work, make sure you're continuing to develop your craft, and learn how to run a business. If any one of those is missing, you cannot be successful in my game.
It makes sense. You mentioned faith, prayer, but it's the same as manifesting, because if you pray for something and it happens, you manifest it. So prayer and manifesting and faith all coexist in some way or form. Do you agree?
I do agree. For me, faith is not a religious concept. You can have faith in anything. The most important thing to have faith in is yourself. And yes, believe in a higher power, and that might be God, or it might be your higher self, or it might be the collective consciousness of the universe, it might be source power, whatever it might be. Having faith is a good thing. But I also believe that you can have faith and still develop the ability to explain the basis of that faith. And for some people, that might be a very spiritual thing. In my case, it's a slightly more academic thing. That's just my makeup. But yeah, I think first and foremost, you've got to have faith in yourself.
Yes, definitely. So this is my last question. What are your thoughts on the future of coaching and therapy? And how do you see woo-woo concepts and holistic approaches evolving in the coming years?
So coaching is one of the fastest growing disciplines in the world. And it is rapidly, I think, rivaling, I don't think it's as big as therapy, but it's certainly very rapidly growing. And I think it's because it's a very future-focused mode compared to therapy, which tends to be looking at the past, analysing, looking at past experiences. But I also think they're similar in ways. I think we are in an age when there is so much fear, so much messy stuff has happened. I think people are losing so much faith in governments, institutions, you know, those kind of global infrastructures that we are so subject to that don't always seem to have our interests at heart. And I think the searching that creates is leading people to coaches, therapists, spiritual and personal development. And I think that those disciplines really help build enlightenment and ascension of a sort for people. And for everyone, that's not a spiritual journey. It's just an ability to be more happy, successful, empowered, to cope better. You know, it can function at many levels. So I believe that These are fast-growing industries. I think they're hugely important. They're utterly transformative. And I think they're probably part of a bit of an age of enlightenment that we're in. I think we're in a sort of age of enlightenment, and I don't think this is consistent. I think there are a lot of asleep people. You know, I know your company is Wide Awake Media. I think there are a lot of people existing sleepwalking, but I think there is a small and growing group of very much awake people, and they are searching. And not all coaches and therapists, because you get coaches whose credentials might look similar to mine, and all they do is coach corporate leaders to be more effective at delivering projects. Whereas when I work with people, it runs a lot deeper than that. But I think there is a kind of growing orientation around understanding ourselves, because we're in an age when the world around us feels a little bit unravelly. Maybe that leads people to seek higher knowledge, insight, power, and coaching sits really nicely with that.
Yes. I see you got something called Get Success Score App.
Success.scoreapp.com. Yeah.
27 questions, personalized reporting, and it's feeling blocked, get unstuck, find your subconscious success block. And so, what are these 27 questions? I meant to look it up, but I never got a chance because I ran out of time.
Yeah. So effectively, that is a quiz. So it's getsuccess.scoreapp.com. That is a quiz that helps people understand what level their blocks might exist at. So I talked earlier about coaching, and my work is about, I want to get here. This is how I want to experience life, but something seems to be getting in my way. This quiz helps diagnose what level those blocks might sit at. For some of us, it's as simple as we've developed bad habits. We procrastinate, we scroll our phone when we should be out doing the things that are going to create success. For some of us, it's more emotional. Fear is holding us back. Old wounds are holding us back. For some of us, it's thinking and language based. We tell ourselves unhelpful stories. We hold unhelpful beliefs. And for some of us, it's that we are on the right path. So that thing we think we want, it's actually not our thing at all. It's what our mother told us we should aspire to, and our path is actually over here. Those 27 questions, that quiz, gives people a sense of which of those things, alignment, emotion, thought, or behavior, they should go and look at first. It's likely to be their primary block area. And that's really helpful when you do the quiz. You're told your primary block, and you're also given some tools that you can use to start addressing or shifting or loosening that block. And you're also invited to have a conversation with me to help you go a bit deeper and diagnose what might be happening underneath the surface.
That makes sense. You got any last words for the audience?
Well, just thank you for listening. It feels like we've had a really long conversation. It's been great fun. And if anyone does want to explore any of these topics further, there are a lot of free resources on my website, which is thesuccesssmith.com. I do my best to put out lots of free resources for people so that they can start their own journey or further their own journey without having to get full coaching, join a big program, but just start exploring really the range of things that we've discussed today. There's lots on the website to further people's knowledge if they're interested in what we've been talking about.
Yes, all that information will be in the description, especially the Score app, so you can take your assessment. Thank you for watching the Uncultured Truth podcast with my special guest, Dr. Victoria Stakelum.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem.